The $650 car that can't afford its own coffee. Inside America's broke billionaire cosplay. Picture this. A man walks into brunch wearing an $800 belt, his BMW key fob resting on the table like a trophy, positioned just so, next to his mimosa, where everyone can see it. 30 minutes later, the check arrives. $62 ahead. Nothing outrageous. And this same man, the one with the designer belt and the German badge glinting under the restaurant lights, starts fumbling through his banking app, transferring funds between accounts, asking the table if anyone can spot him until next Friday. He drove a $650 a month car to a table he couldn't afford to leave. And that's the moment it clicks. This isn't a story about one guy at brunch. This is a nationwide epidemic of people who have mastered the art of looking rich while being catastrophically, dangerously broke. Not a little behind. Negative net worth. One busted transmission away from disaster. Today we expose exactly how this illusion is built, who's profiting from it, and how to make sure you're not the one footing the bill for a fantasy. Here's what the luxury industry doesn't want you to understand. Brands like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, BMW, Mercedes, they don't actually make their fortunes selling to millionaires. There simply aren't enough eight-figure buyers to sustain a global empire. So decades ago, these companies engineered a second tier. Cheaper products still stamped with the sacred logo, built specifically for people who cannot afford the real thing, but desperately need the symbol. That's why Louis Vuitton sells a $500 key pouch. That's why BMW builds a stripped-down 2 Series starting at $38,000. These products were never built for the wealthy. They were built to extract money from people chasing the feeling of wealth. And here's the gut punch. A 2023 Experience study found that the average income of someone financing an entry-level luxury car is actually lower than someone who bought a fully loaded Honda Accord. Read that again. The BMW driver at the stoplight is statistically poorer than the Honda driver next to him. But nobody's impressed by a paid-off Accord. Now watch what happens when you study actual millionaires. Research behind the next millionaire next door found that most American millionaires don't drive luxury cars. Most don't wear visible designer labels. Why would they? Their bank account already knows the truth. They don't need a stranger at a coffee shop to validate their net worth. But the financially insecure? They need that validation constantly because nothing internal is confirming it for them. That $500 bag isn't for the buyer. It's for the imagined reaction of a stranger who will forget about it in 10 seconds. Then there's what I call badge engineering. Someone wants the prestige of a BMW but can't afford a real one, so they buy the base model. Cloth seats, the weakest engine available. $44,000 for a car that, on paper, loses to a $39,000 fully loaded Honda Accord in horsepower, interior quality, and reliability. They're paying a $5,000 premium for a worse car, banking on the fact that strangers won't check under the hood. And here's the cruelest twist. The people who be impressed by that badge don't know anything about cars. The people who do know cars can spot a strip trim from across a parking lot. So the buyer overpays to impress people who don't matter and looks foolish to the ones who do. This is where the real psychology surfaces. Wealth exists in 2 forms. Visible wealth, the car, the watch, the vacation photos. And invisible wealth, the retirement accounts, the emergency fund, the paid-off assets nobody ever sees. For a genuine millionaire next door, invisible wealth can outweigh visible wealth by a ratio of 20-1. They might drive a decade-old sedan while sitting on $800,000 in index funds. But the person cosplaying success has that ratio flipped upside down. 90% visible, 10% invisible. And that invisible 10% is often a checking account with less than $1,000 in it. Here's a number that should terrify you. The Federal Reserve found nearly 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency without borrowing or selling something. Now overlay that with people making $75,000 a year, taking home roughly $4,800 a month, and watch the math implode. Rent, $2,200. Car payment, $650. Insurance, phone, subscriptions, another $600. That's $3,450 gone before a single grocery run. $1,300 left for food, gas, emergencies, everything. $45 a day to survive on. One car repair, one sick week, and the entire structure collapses into debt. And the debt doesn't even buy ownership anymore. Modern fake wealth is subscription-based. Leasing a Mercedes E-Class for $689 a month, 36 months, $24,800 spent, and at the end you own absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, someone buying a 3-year-old Honda for $24,000, financed over 4 years, pays less monthly and walks away owning an asset worth real money. Over a decade, the leasing lifestyle costs $83,000 and produces zero equity. The unglamorous alternative costs $48,000 and builds an actual asset. That $35,000 gap is a house down payment, sacrificed entirely for the performance of arriving somewhere in style. Watch how these people talk, too. The financially insecure discuss spending. Restaurants, sneakers, the next trip. The financially secure discuss compounding, allocation, equity, appreciation. One vocabulary orbits consumption. The other orbits construction. And watch their consistency. A genuinely wealthy person wears the same face at the grocery store as they do at gala. The cosplayer has two identities, the polished public performance and the anxious private reality. Switching handbags depending on who's watching, borrowing a friend's car for road trips because the lease mileage is sacred. Maintaining two selves is exhausting. It's a confession disguised as confidence. Here's the final, most damning tell. Real wealth produces calm. If you can genuinely afford a Rolex, a $50 dinner bill means nothing to you. But the cosplayer displays luxury while visibly panicking over small, ordinary expenses. They vanish to the bathroom when the check arrives. They propose complicated ways to split a bill, because every dollar already went toward the performance, and there's nothing left for reality to interrupt it. So what do you actually do with this? Stop measuring wealth by what's visible and start measuring it by what's owned. Assets minus liabilities, nothing else. Track your own ratio of visible spending to invisible building. And if it's inverted, fix it before it fixes you. Before buying the cheapest item from an expensive brand, ask if you'd want it without the logo. And confront the deeper issue underneath all of it. No purchase repairs a damaged sense of self-worth. You'll buy the bag and still feel hollow, then the watch, then the car, chasing a fix that consumption was never built to deliver. The truly wealthy were never trying to convince you of anything. They built their fortunes in silence, while everyone else was busy performing one they didn't have. You don't need to look rich. You need to actually be rich. And the tragedy is, the road to real wealth requires walking away from the appearance of it entirely.